It started as an ordinary day at the airport, but what unfolded left everyone speechless. An elderly black man, dressed in a modest suit, quietly approached the boarding gate. Despite having his ticket in hand, he was stopped by staff who claimed there was an issue. Passengers nearby watched uncomfortably, some whispering while others looked away. The man remained calm, his demeanor dignified, though you could sense the sting of humiliation in his eyes. Just as tensions began to rise, something extraordinary happened. A fellow passenger noticed a glimmer of gold on the man's shoulder bag. They leaned closer, recognizing a pair of military shoulder boards, the kind reserved for a general. Murmurs spread through the crowd as people began to piece together who this man might really be. The atmosphere shifted instantly, and what happened next left everyone questioning their assumptions. Stay tuned for the full story. The crowd grew silent as the realization spread. Those golden shoulder boards were unmistakable, a symbol of high rank and service. People began exchanging glances, whispering questions. Was he really a general? If so, why wasn't anyone treating him with the respect he deserved? Meanwhile, the man stood there, quiet and composed, his expression unreadable. He didn't demand attention or try to prove himself. It was almost as if he had seen moments like this far too many times before. One by one, passengers started to step forward, some offering words of support, others simply watching in growing discomfort. A gate agent hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed. Who was this man, really? And why had his uniform's insignia gone unnoticed until now? Slowly, pieces of his story began to emerge from those who recognized him, his years of service, his sacrifice, and the incredible journey that led him here. But the tension wasn't over yet. As the murmurs grew louder, the gate agent stepped away to consult with a supervisor, leaving the elderly man standing alone. Despite the awkward stares and hushed conversations around him, he remained calm, his hands folded in front of him, as if waiting for something he already knew would come. Among the crowd, an older woman whispered, "I think I've seen him before," and began scrolling through her phone, trying to match his face to a memory she couldn't quite place. Nearby, a young man in uniform shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing the shoulder boards but unsure whether to speak up. He exchanged glances with an older veteran sitting across from him, whose jaw tightened as he watched the scene unfold. Meanwhile, the gate agent returned, her expression uncertain, still hesitant to acknowledge the significance of the man's rank. The crowd waited, torn between confusion, frustration, and a growing sense of unease. Who was this man? Why was he being questioned at all? And what would happen next? The silence at the gate felt heavier with each passing second. The elderly man stood firm, his quiet dignity drawing even more attention than if he had spoken up. The gate agent's voice trembled slightly as she leaned in to ask him another question. But before he could respond, the young man in uniform finally stepped forward. His voice was steady but tinged with disbelief as he said, "Excuse me, but do you know who this is?" The crowd turned toward him, their curiosity growing. The young soldier gestured toward the man's shoulder boards and added, "He's a general, a decorated one." His words hung in the air, challenging anyone to dismiss them. For a moment, the gate agent froze, her uncertainty now mingled with embarrassment. At that moment, the older veteran stood too, removing his cap as a sign of respect. "I served under him," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. But even as the man's identity became clearer, the tension remained. Would the staff finally acknowledge him, or would this moment of reckoning take an even more unexpected turn? The atmosphere at the gate shifted from unease to outright tension. As passengers began murmuring their support, the elderly man finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding. "I appreciate your concern," he said, nodding toward the young soldier and the veteran. "But this isn't the first time I've been questioned for simply existing in a place I have every right to be." His words silenced the whispers, leaving only the faint hum of the airport intercom in the background. Just as the gate agent began fumbling through an apology, a manager arrived, clearly briefed but visibly flustered. The manager scanned the man's credentials, but instead of an immediate resolution, they asked, "Why didn't you identify yourself sooner?" The question landed like a spark in dry grass, igniting murmurs of disbelief. The man raised an eyebrow, his tone sharpening slightly. "Must I announce my worth to be treated with basic decency?" His response hung in the air, cutting through the tension like a blade. As the crowd digested his words, a second, unexpected twist emerged. A woman from across the gate area stepped forward, holding her phone high. "I know exactly who he is," she said loudly, her voice tinged with urgency. "And I think everyone else here should too." The crowd turned toward her, and what she revealed next would leave everyone stunned. The woman held her phone up, her voice trembling but resolute. "This man is General Harold Davis, a hero. He led critical rescue missions overseas and has been awarded some of the highest military honors. Look him up. His story is everywhere." The crowd leaned in, their phones lighting up as they began to search for his name. Within moments, gasps echoed through the gate as passengers realized the truth. The man standing humbly before them wasn't just any general. He was a living legend. The gate agent and manager exchanged panicked glances, now visibly overwhelmed. They quickly moved to apologize, offering to escort the general to his seat in first class. But General Davis held up a hand, his expression calm yet firm. "No need for a scene," he said. "I'm used to being overlooked. It's not the first time, and it likely won't be the last. But maybe this moment will make some of you think differently next time." As the crowd stood in stunned silence, another twist unfolded. The older veteran, who had spoken earlier, approached General Davis with tears in his eyes. "You saved my unit, sir," he said, his voice breaking. "We wouldn't be here without you." General Davis placed a hand on his shoulder, a small but powerful gesture that carried more weight than words. The entire gate erupted in applause, a mix of respect and regret for what had just transpired. As General Davis boarded quietly, the weight of the moment lingered, leaving everyone with a question they couldn't ignore. How often do we judge others without knowing the full story? As General Davis walked down the jet bridge, the applause slowly faded, but the impact of the moment lingered. People exchanged quiet looks, some reflecting on their own assumptions, others still scrolling through their phones, learning about the man who had just shown such grace under pressure. The veteran returned to his seat, visibly emotional, while the young soldier stared after the general, clearly inspired. At the gate, the staff seemed shaken, their hurried apologies too little, too late. Yet the general's words echoed in the minds of those who had witnessed the scene. His calm reminder about dignity and decency left an impression far deeper than anger ever could. As the plane took off, the mood in the terminal shifted, quieter, more thoughtful. It wasn't just about General Davis anymore. It was about how easily we overlook the humanity and stories of those around us. Everyone there would leave changed.